Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone, episode number 610 for the 21st of June 2020. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia, and it's been pouring. And just in the last 10 minutes, the rain stopped and all the birds are singing, getting in their songs before the rain comes back, I guess. And for those who want to know, this is Sunday morning here in Australia, in Sydney, Australia. Coming up on this week's show, it's Maynard's Spooky Action this week. Maynard chats to an old friend of the Skeptic Zone, an old friend of skepticism, and an old friend of mine, the one, the only, George Rubb, the singing skeptic, the man who first came to my attention when I met him in 2008 in DragonCon, Atlanta. I wonder if DragonCon's going ahead this year. Sadly, of course, due to travel restrictions, I can't make it. Damn. Oh well. Anyway, I met George Rubb way back in 2008, and I remember going to one of his late-night concerts and falling asleep because I was so jet-lagged. No offense, George. This week, Maynard chats to George about all sorts of things. You never know what they're going to talk about next, but we do end up with George singing the theme song from the James Bond movie Moonraker. Yeah, that's what happens when Maynard interviews you. And I have been enjoying George's 13-song series of concerts live every couple of weeks online. Anyway, I'll be adding links to Geo's website in this week's show notes. After that, it's Logical Fallacies with Michelle Bickersma. This week, Michelle will be looking at the non sequitur. I wonder if that follows. No, it doesn't. Anyway, the non sequitur, a logical fallacy with Michelle Bickersma. Then to round off the show, it's the Book of Tim with Tim Mendham. And this week, Tim continues his two-part series on chiropractic. And that features, it's a big feature on chiropractic in the latest issue of the Skeptic magazine, the journal from Australian Skeptics. And this week, Tim will be looking at the Chiro Wars. Now, if you are looking on the show notes at skepticzone.tv, in every show note at the moment, I'm including a link to coronaconspiracy.cloud. It's a website being put together a couple of months ago for people like you and me to upload coronavirus conspiracies. And anybody is free to go there and peruse the amazing list of entries already put up there by people all around the world. What's this one? I'm just looking there now. COVID 5G Gates. Oh, good grief. And what's this one? COVID-19 is a false flag operation to usher in New World Order. Anyway, have a visit and peruse all the incredible coronavirus conspiracies that have been floating around. And if you find one, you can take a photograph and upload that too. And you can do searches via tags and look at details. It's a fantastic resource. That's coronaconspiracy.cloud. And no matter where you are in the world, if you're in Mexico, Ireland, Bulgaria, anywhere, you can upload images to that website. But now it's time for me to run downstairs and look in the fridge for some leftover barbecued sausage. I think there might be one or two. Bit of toast, cold sausage on toast. It's all right, believe me. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Here's Maynard's Spooky Action at a distance.
Look, ladies and gentlemen, I've got someone on the line here, someone very important. Sure, you might think of him as a sceptical guy. George Rubb is a man who can do many things. He can drive German cars. He can drive Japanese-produced cars. He can not drive trucks with a very high ceiling through low windows, but that's nothing. Don't worry about that. He can use Imperial. He can use metric. He can do a podcast about how to paint your lounge room. He can do a podcast about how to change your car battery. He can do anything. In fact, he will be doing anything for you right now. Please take my unfinished life and make it complete, George Arab.
There's no way I could possibly live up to that kind of an intro. My goodness.
Oh, come on, man. Every time I've spoken to you, it's been world-class award-winning stuff.
Well, you're very kind, and it's very early for me, and it's very late for you.
And this time I've got the trombone. There you go, bit of B flat action.
What else does one need?
Oh.
What else does one need apart from an international trombone playing at 8 in the morning? Oh, even better.
There you go. That's my Southside Johnny and the Dukes Memorial harmonica they gave me. Please explain to people who might, for some reason, be listening to the Skeptic Zone and not know who you are.
Explain who I am?
Yeah, briefly. I mean, what do you...
On top of what you just did? Oh, my gosh.
Well, I mean, because I missed so much. I mean, there's so many things with Mortimer I missed. The rabbi with the alibi, missed him.
Oh, my gosh. I have a silly little podcast that I've been doing since 1937 that, has some skeptical content to it, has some comedic things. I've come to be very comfortable with my role as the brain sorbet of the science communication community. I kind of provide a little bit of a comic relief here and there in between the people that actually know what they're talking about. I usually just sort of slip in and can ask a good pointed question and then make some kind of reference to buttocks or something, and then we go back to the real subject. That's my role, and I'm completely happy with that.
Oh, look, and what I love, there's one thing I love about yourself and a local performer here in Australia called Bob Down, who's a comic, is that you can do something, and if for some reason it doesn't quite work, you can sing a song and everything is forgiven. Because you can,
That's true, yeah.
You can do the song so well. Mind you, I have not seen any time where something you've done hasn't worked and you've had to do that. But it's like having two strings to your bow, where it's like if a skeptical person came out and made a very important skeptical fact, and it wasn't all that interesting, everyone would go, "Oh yeah, that's nice." But then if they did that and sang a song like you do, that just knocks it out of the park. It takes it to a different level.
I guess, yeah. It was funny. I was at QED last year, 2 years ago. Whatever that was. And I gave a talk, and it completely bombed. It totally flopped. I had this idea to do kind of a high concept, a purposely boring talk that I thought would be funny, and it just didn't work. It was the first talk of the conference. I didn't realize I was going to be the first speaker. I thought I'd be somewhere towards the end, where like to provide a alternate kind of thing. I literally opened up the whole thing, and it just tanked. It just was awful. 40 minutes of flop sweat. It was really bad.
Well, often when that has happened, do you think you overthought it? Do you think that's what you did?
Maybe. I'm not sure. If I had known I would be the very first speaker for the conference, I think I would have reformulated my approach. But it was kind of a funny idea. I thought, let me talk about supposed conspiracy theories that are real, and I would make up very funny ones and be silly. Like the leading one was the idea that Richard Weissman isn't a real person. Mm-hmm. And so I just did I did like 20 minutes on how we know that Richard Weissman is not a real person. He's just this made up thing. And it just tanked. But
because people were expecting it to be serious, or because they expect,
I think so.
or you weren't giving visual cues it was funny. What do you think was going on?
I think it was a combination of things. I think it was, people didn't expect there to be kind of an alt comedic approach, high concept for the very first thing. It probably wasn't as funny as I thought it was.
I got to say, George, that what you're doing sounds not far from something I've thought of doing at a Skeptics thing in one of the side rooms. I've always wanted to have the thing like, well, you know that Captain Scarlet and Spectrum, they actually started the war with the Mysterons. The Mysterons did not start the war with us. They were at the planet. They blew something like that and doing things like that. Mm-hmm. And I haven't done it because I'm thinking, gee, is this going to be stupid? No one will know what's going on, that kind of thing. But as the first talk, that is also something is expected.
Yeah, don't do it first. No. If you're going to do it somewhere, don't do it first. But the point being, that evening, I performed my Broad Street Score, which is a string quartet version of a song collection of mine, and that killed. It killed. It was so great, and I was fortunate that I could feel like the trip was worth it. That I hadn't just totally splattered the event with my 40 minutes of non-comedy. That with an hour of music, that was quite exemplary. The string players were just wonderful. The arrangements were wonderful. I didn't do the arrangements, so I can say that. And that rescued it. So yes, I do have the backup of the the performance to save sometimes the trudge that might come out of my mouth otherwise.
Oh, look! That is the only known time I think where any of your talks hasn't worked out, isn't it? I mean, your talks usually go. I always hear about them. In fact, I didn't hear about that one because it was hidden in England. That's why.
That's right. Yes. Well, we had an agreement. As I left the country and they stamped my passport, we had this agreement that no one would mention it ever again. So.
And look, and I remember when I was at TAM, I think it was TAM Las Vegas, 12, something like that anyway. I was just wandering past a hallway and there you were giving a small concert to about 30 or 40 people just jammed in. And I said, oh, what's that? That's just George. He's playing, I don't know if it was Dark Side of the Moon on the piano or something like that. It was like something.
Okay, yeah,
and
sure.
It was like,
sure.
I went, and I was going to go back and have a look again, but I just said to the person, yeah, sure he is. And not in the sure he is, I don't believe you, but of course he is. I mean, and he's probably having a couple of dogs come on and he'll be juggling on a unicycle with them later. And that would also have been acceptable. And it just looked great. Right. Everyone was looking. It was really a lot of fun. I mean, you are, if anyone else is hosting a skeptical event, you're setting the bar high for them sometimes.
Well, I'd like to think that yes, trying to provide some consistent good hosting capacity. I don't know. It's it's all fun. It's all fun.
I know, you do it one as well there. Look, and also I was going to say, look, of course, you would also know George because of his albums 21812, Trebuchet, Vitriol, Minutia, and his songs When I Was Your Age. And like I said, his vocals in Pick Up the Pieces, you've probably heard that as well. You've heard of him a couple of times on Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, and also as the caveman snake oil salesman. Is it in Og the Skeptical Caveman? Was that the name of the...
Yeah, Og the Skeptical Caveman, yeah.
You're really good in that app, George.
Oh, thank you. That was fun.
Because that looked like a whole day in a forest or more.
It was.
To film that one. And your role was initially quite charming, but then there's a twist and I quite like it.
What was fun about that day, that was with my friends, obviously with the Skeptics Guide, all the novellas and everybody up there. So they were in a park. They had sort of taken this whole corner of a park. They had built this entire set, a whole little village. And that entire day, I had a wig and no glasses on. So no one knew who I was all day. It was great. And not until I started talking would people realize that it was me because of my voice. So I would walk up and just sort of, be parts of conversations, and people, the crew and stuff that was there who maybe knew me from before had no idea it was me. And it was so interesting and so sort of freeing. Because I was walking into trees and stuff because I literally didn't have my glasses on me. And the way the costumes were, you didn't have any pockets. So I left everything in the car. And we had to walk up to this, area in the forest where the set was built. And to just be really completely anonymous amongst friends and people that know you was really interesting.
Wow. So like being the invisible man or something?
Yeah, kind of. It also happened at one of the SciCons. There was a costume party. And at the time, like I do now, I have a beard, and I wear glasses, obviously. And for that, the SGU and I went as Gilligan's Island. So I went as the professor. So I shaved my beard and I had a wig, and I walked into this party, no glasses, no beard, and hair, and nobody knew who I was. I mean, nobody. There was like a audible conversation in the room of like, who is that guy with the SGU? Now, keep in mind, I had been on stage for 3 days now, like introducing everybody.
Wow.
And I thought, I got to go rob a bank or something because no one knows who I am. It was so curious that as soon as I have a wig, the way your brain works just pulls me, like in seeing my face, it pulls me out of the category of who George could be, because George is obviously not the guy without the, with the beard and without the hair. And people they had no idea. It was awesome.
Richard Saunders said he gets a fairly interesting memory of you too, because it seems like you would see each other regularly each year just backstage before Richard goes on every year at TAM, right. And never see each other during the year. And then, oh, hi, George, we were here. You go, oh, yeah, that's right too, yeah. And I've made a specialty of speaking to you after you've worked for 48 hours straight and then sit down and ask you questions. That's always a great experience.
Oh, I love it. I love it. No, it's very much like I've never been in the armed forces. I've never been in combat, but I'm sure that there is a certain focus to the to those weekends, and then the relationships that you make are really quite wonderful. And yeah, they reestablish themselves very quickly when you're back in that situation again.
Oh, look, and I've spoken to Jay once or twice in that situation as well. He's getting good at the rapid-fire questions about Spandau Ballet.
Oh, good for him. Yeah, we're very proud of him. He's come a long way.
He has come a long way. And that sort of thing. Oh, and of course, I'd like to recommend to people 13 Songs with George Arab is a good one. Now, in Australia here, I think it's on in a morning. But is it available for replay, that show?
Yeah, everything's on my YouTube channel, so you can go to my George Arab YouTube channel, and all the episodes of 13 Songs are there for rewatching at your convenience, in the bath or whatever.
Oh, it was Connections, wasn't the recent one?
That's coming up. That's this Thursday. I'm going to be doing Connections. Yeah, so it's every song is going to segue into the next with some kind of significant connection betwixt all the songs.
Which is also the thing about your albums. The last note of the previous album is usually the first note of the first song on the next album. Is that correct?
Very good. Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Not everyone realizes that.
Skeptical things have had to move online, as you would well have known, and you've been involved in a few. Now, do you think that's generally a good thing? Do you think there'll be people coming to these online ones that can't physically come, and there could be a rejuvenation of people that wouldn't find themselves having any truck with the movement?
I think so. I mean, for example, Nexus this year, the thing out of New York, the Northeast Conference for Science and Skepticism is going to be totally online, which was coincidental. It kind of worked out that it was going to be that way anyway, and it sort of worked out really well. I think it's going to be astounding to be able to have international viewers, from Europe and from Australia and from wherever, all over the planet, tuning in and getting a dose of some really well-produced skeptical content. I think it's nice. I mean, there's nothing like being in a room full of people and having the fun experience of it, but to be able to expand one's reach into the Zoom world, I think it's great. I think it's really great.
And of course, do some skeptical advice here before we get to the Shirley Bassey section of the show. Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering if with this insane time we're living in particular your country being a little bit more insane than everyone else, or maybe just ahead of the curve, ahead of the curve, I don't know. What's the best way to get through this skeptically? I mean, because applying logic to something in these situations doesn't work. When someone is killing another person by choking off their windpipe for no apparent reason in a video that lacks context, how can you get any logic out of anything?
Yeah. I think you just have to keep checking yourself. You have to keep checking your own biases. You have to keep checking. It's hard. It's hard to think differently about things sometimes. And I think there's such a sea change that is potentially happening, especially in the States, well, all over the world, but especially in the States, this idea of like totally restructuring some major organizations that have been a certain way for decades, if not centuries, like restructuring how police work, restructuring how communities can police themselves and help themselves. You have to check your biases and your presumptions, and that's the king skeptic thing to do, is to constantly be asking yourself, why do I think this is the right thing? Why do I believe this? Is it the right thing? And your perception may very well be correct, but you got to keep asking. And I've caught myself a number of times of thinking like, I need to think differently about how governments are approaching things and how I would approach things. So that's just be vigilant in your self-doubt and your perception.
And I guess also
there's not much else you can do.
Try not to react too quickly either.
Absolutely. Yeah. Take a second. I mean, the idea of you see the thing, you see the headline, you read the piece of news. Yeah, take a second. It's hard though. It's really, really hard, and when lives are at stake, it's even harder. So,
George, could you give us just a small part of the Moonraker theme on the acoustic guitar?
I will grab my guitar. How much of it do you want?
Oh, just one verse or one chorus.
Should we go through the first chorus, maybe?
Oh, okay. And look, lyrically, I don't think there's anything to point out. It's not a live and let die difficult chord manipulation, is it?
It's not bad, actually. I was surprised that there's a little bit of an interesting chord thing happening, and it's very early for me, so I might have to do it the octave down, and I apologize. Let's see. Where are you? Why do you hide? Where is that moonlight trail that leads to your side? Just like the moonraker goes in search of his dream of gold. I search for love, for someone to have and hold. I've seen your smile in 1,000 dreams, felt your touch, and it always seems you love me. You love me.
George Harab will return in the Geologic podcast.
There you go. Yes.
It looks like you missed Mr. Harab.
Did I?
That's it. Yes. Well done. That's it.
Thump.
Yes.
Did I?
Anyway, look, thank you very much. Is there anything you want to plug before you go too? Because you are nothing if not the skeptical plugger.
Oh, sure. The tune into 13 Songs that happens every other week on a Thursday at 7 o'clock here on the Eastern Time. But go to my YouTube channel and check out the Geologic podcast occasionally if you're interested in that kind of thing as well. But just take care of yourselves. That's the most important thing.
They can get some requests in ahead too, can't they? Maybe.
Sure. Why not? We had a wonderful request/quiz show version where I asked a trivia question. Whoever got that right then got to pick the song that I would perform. That was really fun. We'll do that again at some point. And I think Maynard, for you, I think I'm going to do a all James Bond themes, 13 songs.
Oh wow!
I think I have to.
Well, I mean, that's the easy of the Shirley Bassey there. You got Thunderball. That's a toughie. A toughie.
Thunderball, Goldfinger, obviously.
Because of its range.
Die is a good one.
Oh yeah. Look, you need some dancers to come in during the middle bit and then just go out again.
Oh, no question.
And just come in for that kind of thing. But George,
I think we'll do it in a pool.
It's been lovely talking to you again. I'm sorry I've been a bit tired. I've spent 8 hours editing a podcast on Tom Jones, and it's almost finished, and it's only 40 minutes. I think I spend too much time editing. I mean, because it's easy enough to go down that rabbit.
Well, that's not unusual.
George Harab, thank you very much. George Harab, a man.
I started listening to Ono, Ross & Carey shortly after I broke my arm, and the doctor had told me I'd never walk again.
I couldn't get my book started.
It was just after my landlord died.
I was allergic to water.
Addicted to wheatgrass.
I was lost, honestly.
I knew it was time to make a change, and that's when I turned on my preferred podcasting app.
What if all the answers I was looking for?
What if they were all right here?
There's something about Oh No, Ross and Carey that you just can't get anywhere else.
They're thought leaders, discoverers, founders.
I'd call them heroes.
Healers.
Luminaries.
Ross and Carey don't just report on fringe science, spirituality, and claims of the paranormal. They take part themselves.
They show up so you don't have to.
But you might find that you want to.
My arm is better. I can walk again.
6 months. No wheatgrass.
I wrote an entire book this weekend. It's terrible, but I did it.
My landlord came back from the dead.
If I can listen to this podcast, anyone can do it. Just go to MaximumFun.org.
Thank you, Ross and
Carey.
Ono, Ross and Carey is just a podcast. It doesn't do anything. It's just sounds you listen to in your ears. All these people are made up. Goodbye.
Logical fallacies. What are logical fallacies, and why is it important that critical thinkers should know about them? A logical fallacy is an error we can make in reasoning, but it usually crops up when we are discussing or arguing our point of view. Some people might even knowingly use them to try and score cheap points in an argument due to intellectual laziness. They are traps we can fall into, but if we know what to look out for, we can spot them when they occur and stop ourselves from using them. This time, we'll look at non sequitur.
The term non sequitur comes to us from Latin and translates as "it does not follow." It is a statement or conclusion that doesn't logically follow from the previous statement or the main point of the argument.
We might call this the "what's that got to do with it" fallacy. Many times, people will not answer the question asked or tack on extra unnecessary information that detracts from the question at hand.
That awful skeptic questioned my psychic intuition and mediumship, but what would he know? And anyway, I had a traumatic childhood and have suffered all my life.
This example is based on a real complaint made by someone claiming to have psychic powers when questioned by a skeptical investigator. While we can sympathise with aspects of the psychic's life, their troubles really have no bearing on whether or not they have mystical powers. It can, however, have the effect of deflecting the valid inquiries or criticisms of the skeptic. It's all too easy to paint a skeptic as being negative or uncaring.
The history of mainstream medicine is littered with bad reactions and side effects. That's why alternative medicine works so much better.
There's an old saying, if a medicine doesn't have side effects, it doesn't have effects to begin with. However, in the case of homeopathy, for example, it's clear why it claims to have no side effects, as there is nothing in it to cause effects in the first place. Whether or not a particular pharmaceutical drug has reactions or side effects has nothing to do with the efficacy of something calling itself alternative medicine. It's unrelated, and it just doesn't follow.
Science tells us that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but it can be transformed. This surely shows that spiritual energy is real and Reiki healing is possible.
In the skeptical world, there is something called Hymens' Categorical Imperative, named after skeptical investigator Professor Ray Hyman, which says, "Do not try to explain something until you are sure there is something to be explained." In this case, we have no reason to think that spiritual energy or Reiki, the claimed mystical energy, even exist, despite many people believing in them. Talking about the nature of energy as discovered and described by science and then linking it to unproven claims is like an old smoke and mirrors trick, causing you to be distracted from the real point. It's easy to see how people might use a non sequitur if they truly believe in something like mystical energies. To them, the link to real energy is not a non sequitur at all, and they cannot see why it would not follow nor be related. This commonly occurs when this fallacy is used, and you might have quite a task explaining this to your opponent. Knowing a logical fallacy when you hear one, and even knowing its name, is important when arguing your point of view. However, you may come across as arrogant and not get very far if you call it out by name to your opponent when you hear it being used. If your opponent calls you out for using one, it's time to stop and think about how you are making your case. Use your knowledge of logical fallacies wisely, and remember, that even if your point of view is right and you know all the pitfalls in arguing your case, it doesn't always mean you'll win on the day. And as skeptics, we must also remember that we too can be wrong at times. I'm Michelle Bickersma from the Vic Skeptics. Thanks for listening.
To Madame Zola Latouche, Australia's most accurate psychic, clairvoyant, clairaudient, soul coach, medium, animal communicator, empath, and medical intuitive. Dear Madame Latouche, I am writing to you to express my amazement at the accuracy of the past life counselling and alien contact reading you gave me via telephone on Thursday last. It was a relief for me to discover that not only am I the reincarnation of Julius Caesar, Albert Einstein, and President James K. Polk, but also Categorical of planet Boplina 6, and Vem Lepke Komp of dimension 86. My pet parrot, Susan, was also astonished to find out about her past life as a mammoth from the Pliocene epoch and a velvet slimeworm, although you couldn't tell from exactly where and when, as you said slimeworms tend not to communicate so much. Please find enclosed my check for $19.65 and book us in for another phone session on the 24th of next month. Yours, etc., etc. P.S. When you told me at one point that, quote, there's one born every minute, end quote, which one of my past lives were you referring to? And now we look at the Australian Skeptics newsletter 100. And if you're a subscriber like me to the Australian Skeptics newsletter, you would have received this update on the 16th of June. And the newsletter says in part, we've reached newsletter 100, and we're happy to say that our reader numbers are increasing every issue. But we're naturally keen to spread the skeptical word even further. So if you know someone you think might be interested in reading the newsletter, please forward this issue to them. And then they can sign up using the link at the end. Well, to get the issue in the first place, without this, of course, you go to skeptics.com.au and sign up from there. Some of the news items covered in this issue: Skepticon Goes Online Update, an event for everyone everywhere. As mentioned last issue, the organisers of Skepticon 2020 have decided that the event this year will be a first for Australian skeptics, a purely online convention. Speakers planned to take part include Mike Hall, Dr. Alice Howarth, and Michael Marshall from the Skeptics with a K podcast, and science communicator Dr. Carl Kruszelnicki. The event is being hosted by the Gold Coast Skeptics, and full technical details and ticket prices, which are expected to be highly affordable, will be announced soon. Remember to keep those dates aside. That's October the 24th to the 25th this year. The next item says federal court restrains bleach promoting church. The federal court has made orders restraining Southern Cross Directories Proprietary Limited, trading as MMS Australia, and its director Charles Barton from advertising and supplying goods containing certain potentially dangerous substances, including sodium chloride, the main chemical used to make Miracle Mineral Solution, MMS, until a further hearing. This follows the TGA issuing 12 infringement notices totaling $151,200 for alleged unlawful advertising of Miracle Mineral Supplement. It goes on to say that MMS Australia is a chapter of the Genesis 2 Church of Health and Healing, which has been promoting the product for some time, stating it can cure things like autism, acne, cancer, diabetes, and now COVID-19. It has promoted it as a water purifier. The next item says vaccination rates fall in face of anti-vax campaigns. The Sydney Morning Herald reports a, quote, massive uptick, end quote, in media reporting of anti-vaccination activity in Australia has coincided with the fall in routine vaccination rates. And that is worrying news. Also, we read here, China plan to punish skeptics of traditional Chinese medicine. Health authorities in Beijing unveil a set of proposed regulations on traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, for public consultation. But one specific article has drawn the ire of legal experts and people skeptical of TCM practices. Article 54 stipulates that those who, quote, defame and slander, end quote, TCM are subject to punishment by public security departments or even face criminal responsibility for, quote, picking quarrels, causing trouble, and disturbing public order, end quote, a vaguely defined crime often used by Chinese law enforcers to police online speech. Now, there's a lot more to read in this issue of the Australian Skeptics newsletter, Newsletter 100, with lots of links. And, well, what's this right at the end? There's a sort of like a PS. It says, FYI, Skeptics fax number. As of next month, we'll be dropping our fax number due to high costs compared with low usage. We will still be available via email, phone, and snail mail. Fax number? Good heavens. Oh, and also the June 2020 issue of The Skeptic will be out soon. Digital copies this week, with the feature on chiropractic, crazy claims, dodgy claims, the complexities of subluxation complex, say that quickly, and general pseudoscience underpinnings, not to mention how to make wine taste better under strict scientific conditions, the insider story on the Carlos hoax, psychics and mystics in Australian history, and much more. So once again, to sign up for the regular newsletter, just head for skeptics.com.au and look for the sign up link. I sure do miss going to those skeptical meetings in pubs and cafes to hear talks and interact with my friends. Oh well.
I think I can help you with that.
Who the hell are you?
I'm your skeptical fairy godmother angel from the internet.
You're my skeptical what?
Relax, Richard. I can make your wish come true.
What? You mean free beer?
No. The other wish.
Oh, really?
Yes! I have news of skeptical meetings and talks online.
Oh, yes, of course, yes.
Skeptics Cafe Online by the Vic Skeptics brings you live and interactive skeptical talks via Zoom. Anyone, anywhere in the world is welcome to join in on the third Monday of the month. Just check out the Skeptics Cafe page on Facebook to see when the next talk is and who will be presenting. Alternatively, see the Vic Skeptics website at vicskeptics.wordpress.com for details.
That sounds great. A skeptical God, fairy, angel, mother, person.
And there are similar skeptical online talks happening around the country and all over the world. All you need to do is search for them.
Wow. Now, just one more question.
Yes.
What about the beer?
Okay, all right. Well, just for you. I'll make it so you can go to the supermarket, buy whatever beer you like, and drink it while watching the talk online at home.
And they say miracles never happen.
And to think I gave up being the tooth fairy for this?
What?
Nothing. Goodbye.
And now, a reading from the Book of Tim with Tim Mendham.
Hi, my name's Tim Mendham. I'm the editor of Australian Skeptics journal The Skeptic and Executive Officer of Australian Skeptics Inc. And today I'll be continuing our story on chiropractic. This is an article first published in The Skeptic magazine in 1995 and reprinted in our June 2020 issue, which has a major feature on chiropractic. In this story, we continue the article by Stephen Vassar, retired GP and former Vice President of the Victorian Skeptics. This article was first presented as a presentation at a Skeptics convention, and we reprint it now, even though it was 25 years old, because nothing much has changed in chiropractic. Last time we looked at the history of chiropractic, and David Palmer and his son, BJ, and where they were taking the organisation to try and make it seem a bit more scientific, but to differentiate it from established science-based medicine. It was rising again in the 70s, but not all was good, as we were heading down the way of the chiropractic wars. Continue the article from there. The dramatic improvements in chiropractic education lowered the barriers between it and orthodox science, conferring greater academic credibility. The result was, and is, an increasingly bitter debate over the content and character of chiropractic. Principally, the debate is about whether chiropractors are limited practitioners like dentists or podiatrists, primary care practitioners who incorporate some of medicine's tools and knowledge, or primary care practitioners who reject orthodox medicine. Those who cling to the original concepts of Palmer believe that to accept the assumptions of orthodox science is to destroy crucial elements of chiropractic's identity, while those who see chiropractors as valid, limited practitioners believe that accepting orthodox science will help establish the efficacy of chiropractic and confer upon it legitimacy. The following are brief examples of writings from the opposing sides of this debate. Stephen says that he has been selective due to the limited space available, but he believes these quotes accurately reflect the nature of the difference in approach between the two sides. All of these quotes are from chiropractic journals. Let's begin. Robert D. Moots, 1990. The chiropractic profession as a whole spends more on competing with each other in the yellow pages than it does in supporting research. Larry Webster, 1994. Chiropractic would not exist today had B.J. Palmer waited for scientific validation. Jennifer Jamieson, 1991. The case for preventative chiropractic is based upon a priori reasoning. Although such reasoning may be logical, i.e. internally consistent, it bears no proven relationship to reality. John Hart, 1992. It has been found, for example, that by blocking the nervous system, measles can be prevented. Oh dear. A. Christensen, 1987. Some members of our profession would like us to believe that medicine is our greatest enemy. I think it is becoming obvious that arrogant ignorance within our own profession is really what is holding us back. Peter Lind, 1992. It has been studied that both healers' hands and magnets could accelerate the kinetic activity of enzymes in a subject. Joseph Keating, 1993, patient satisfaction is a worthy clinical goal in and of itself, so long as it is not mistaken for experimentally demonstrated effectiveness. Astrologers have been satisfying their customers for millennia, but this hardly supports any scientific claims about the accuracy of their predictions, nor the wisdom of their advice. And John Hartigan, 1992, chiropractic is good for anyone and everyone who has a scientifically demonstrable subluxation, regardless of medical diagnosis or lack thereof. Now, these quotes are all from the period in which Stephen Basser wrote the article originally, but of course those wars continue, right up until a recent chiropractic convention last year in Berlin, in which it got so outrageous that people started throwing bottles of water at each other up onto the stage. The topic then was subluxation and whether it existed or not. And that is still a contentious issue 25 years after Stephen Basser wrote his article and 125 years after it was first promoted. The debate within chiropractic is interesting, but we need to ask, what about the evidence? Over the years, there have been a number of scientific reviews that have included an assessment of the evidence for and against chiropractic. And the most recent, as this article was written, comprehensive review was a report prepared for the Ontario Ministry of Health, called the Ontario Report. This review was, in Stephen's opinion, methodologically sound, but flawed in its conclusion. The authors of the Ontario Report conducted a detailed literature review and found that the first randomised control trial, RCT, of spinal manipulation in the management of low back pain, LBP, was published in 1974. The first controlled trial of chiropractic, but not a randomised controlled trial, was published in 1986. And the authors of this study commented at the time that, quote, any efficacy of chiropractic therapy can only be inferred from the studies of manipulative therapy for the treatment of lower back pain, which have been performed utilising medical, osteopathic, or physiotherapy trained practitioners of manipulation. The Ontario Report authors, in reviewing the pre- and post-1986 research, identified a definite trend in favour of spinal manipulation as a valid treatment of low back pain. And that report says, these results corroborate the value of spinal manipulation. The results demonstrated a consistent and strong trend favouring spinal manipulative treatment. Support is consistent for the use of spinal manipulation. Thus, prior to 1986, spinal manipulation had been shown to be effective in lower back pain trials that did not include chiropractic management. Once trials began to use chiropractic, these also demonstrated that spinal manipulation was effective. The logical conclusion to reach, Stephen Basser suggests, was that spinal manipulation is an effective form of management for some cases of low back pain. But the conclusion the Ontario report came to was more specific. Quote, in the bulk of the methodologically sound clinical studies, spinal manipulation applied by chiropractors is shown to be more effective than many alternative treatments for lower back pain. Given that another major review, the so-called RAND report, had concluded that no well-conducted randomised controlled trials have been done comparing different techniques of manipulation for patients with low back pain, Stephen says he cannot understand or agree with the conclusion reached by the authors of the Ontario report. And don't forget, this was a major report on chiropractic. He says that he believes that the evidence supporting spinal manipulation as a valid treatment for low back pain is strong, though he accepts that there is still some debate about its relative efficacy in chronic pain states. As far as specific chiropractic manipulation is concerned, his assessment of the available evidence leads him to concur with the view that, quote, no single, uniquely chiropractic method of healing can yet be considered scientifically validated. Despite the many satisfied patients, despite nearly a century of apparently useful and successful clinical practice, and despite the many testimonials of remarkable recoveries and cures, the chiropractic art remains scientifically unevaluated for the most part, and therefore necessarily unproven. No strong claims for the adjustive arts are justified at this time. And that's a quote from a paper by J.C. Keating and D.T. Hansen in 1992. In light of the evidence, how then should we deal with chiropractic and chiropractors? Firstly, Stephen says, as a scientist and a health professional, he believes that we must accept the evidence that does exist. Chiropractic manipulation is, on the basis of existing evidence, a valid management option for lower back pain, and has no more or no less evidence to support its use than other treatments such as physiotherapy. Secondly, as there is insufficient evidence at present to support the claim that chiropractic is useful, either in a primary or complementary role in the management of visceral conditions like asthma, headache, gastric ulcer, its use in such cases should be discouraged until supportive evidence is available. None of the major reviews of chiropractic have concluded that chiropractic is useful in these conditions. Thirdly, as there is insufficient evidence at present to support the claim that patients may benefit from preventative or maintenance adjustments, their use should be limited to a research setting. Fourthly, the clinical and academic chiropractors who are fighting the battle for more research into chiropractic deserve our full support. Perhaps chiropractic does have something unique to offer. Perhaps it can help in some visceral conditions. Perhaps patients can benefit from preventative adjustments. Only sound scientific research will allow us to answer these questions. Finally, and most importantly, we must try to create a spirit of cooperative dialogue between chiropractic and orthodox medicine, and seek to break down the us versus them barriers that have been built up over many years by those on both sides who cannot accept that they just might be wrong. Now that's Stephen Basser, writing in 1995 and reprinted in our June 2020 issue of the magazine. We should add that a lot of those visceral conditions that are referred to there are many, many more that chiropractors claim that they can treat. Everything from bedwetting to disease, and some even claiming that they can treat and improve immunity and, in fact, treat coronavirus. So there are some very, very serious issues here with what the chiropractors are claiming they can do, and without evidence to show that they can do it. That's Classic Catch Chiropractic from the June 2020 issue of The Skeptic. Now, at the time of this recording, this issue is not available for free to download, unlike almost all of the other issues of our magazine. You can see those other issues at skeptics.com.au and download everything from 1981 up till the last year. But this article does form part of a major investigative feature in the June 2020 issue of the magazine on chiropractic, in which we look at so many different aspects: shonky research, shonky philosophy, those chiropractors who belong in a shame file for promoting all sorts of shonky science and medicine, and various other aspects of the industry, including the role, or lack of it, of regulators. This is part of a major undertaking by Australian skeptics and others to look at this particular industry, which wants to be seen as scientific, but whose underpinnings are anything but. So if you want to read more about chiropractic in this issue of the magazine, you'll have to subscribe, which you can do on our website, skeptics.com.au.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone, and remember you can find out a lot more about Maynard at maynard.com.au, all his podcasts, all his crazy videos. I think, hopefully in the very near future, there'll be some more live entertainment videos online from Maynard. We're looking forward to that. Now, for you folks in North America, this Tuesday afternoon, I think it is, I'll be chatting online with Susan Gerbeck, a video talk you can view on Facebook, and that will be, for people in Australia, that will be 8 a.m. on Wednesday the 24th. Susan does a regular series of video chats with skeptical people. I will add a link to the show notes if you want to tune in for that. But meanwhile, here in my state, New South Wales, I think the news is next week or very soon, cinemas are going to be reopening. That's going to be interesting. Because I don't think the big studios are releasing their blockbusters they've been keeping on ice. But I do notice a lot of classic movies being re-released soon, including The Empire Strikes Back, the 40th anniversary, which means it's been 20 years since I went to see the 20th anniversary. Good grief. Coming up on next week's show, more Logical Fallacies with Michelle Bickersma, and I think there's going to be a story about the Vaxxed bus. Maybe that should be respelled. Maybe they got the spelling wrong. It should be called the Vexed Bus. The Vaxxed Bus 2, touring this country soon, I think. Anyway, we'll try to bring you some news on that crazy situation. And just before I go, thank you once again to the new Patreons who've just come on board with chipping in $5. That's really great. Everybody who chips in $5 is really helping the show be produced every week and stay in your ears or in your car or on your system or however you listen to the Skeptic Zone. Maybe you're swimming. You've got special underwater ears, Bluetooth or something. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics or any other skeptical organisation. Hello to all those people who listen after the music. It's the dice game, the afterthought section of the show, where I roll a die. In this case, it's a 10-sided die 3 times. And you use whatever, where's my coffee, powers you have. That's better. To see if you can guess or predict or look into the future. If people look into the future, what are they seeing? They're seeing information sent back from the past. And I think it's pretty well understood that you can't send information into the past. Maybe we can. We can try. 10-sided die. I'm going to roll it 3 times. Here it comes. Roll number 1. Guess away. There's no room on the table because my sound foam is there. But let's see if right at the end here. It's gone under the sound foam. I'll pull it out. It's number 1. Where's my Skeptic Zone magic pencil? I'm not prepared today at all. Here it is. 1. Okay. Next roll of the die is 5. 1, 5. And the last number this week. 1. So this week's winning numbers. Winning, what do you win? You win. You win the chance to hear the next episode. Today's winning numbers. 1, 5, and 1. Where are those cats?